I'm Dryden Hill, and today I'm going to be teaching you some tips to get a little bit more out of your dynamics. Let's get started. Much like pitch or rhythm or articulation, dynamics are a massive facet of musical practice. They bring a great deal of texture to a given piece of music, and by changing a given dynamic, you can completely alter the effect of a certain passage. Emphasizing a certain note for emotional or dramatic reasons is absolutely a dynamic decision. Dynamic has a massive effect on the interest curve of a given song. There's a major difference between a slow crescendo, the effect that creates, and a subito dynamic change. You'll find that each instrument has its own dynamic range and limitations. For instance, an acoustic guitar by itself simply can't produce the amount of sound that a church organ could. The common misconception is that percussion is loud, but I'm going to tell you today that percussionists have more control over the low end of our dynamic range than any other instrument family. A famous example of this is Ravel's Bolero, in which the snare drum player plays a crescendo that lasts a full 14 minutes. Honestly, there's too many ways to adjust our dynamics to count, but I'm going to give you some of the big important ones. First off is going to be stroke height, or literally adjusting how high your mallet or stick is playing from. Playing with a lower stick height means you're going to produce a lower dynamic, and a higher stick height, a higher dynamic. Pretty easy, right? Although a fairly simplistic approach, this is excellent for cleaning up stick heights and for matching dynamic across a wide ensemble such as a drum line. In addition to adjusting our height, we can also adjust our velocity. By playing with a slower velocity, you're going to be producing less vibration into the drum and thus a quieter sound. Changing dynamics in this way by changing your velocity has a secondary effect. If you play with a slower velocity, your stroke is going to be more legato, as opposed to more of a staccato stroke for the higher velocity. This affects your sound in some ways that are worth noting. Moving inward from the sticks, we get to stroke mechanics. This includes how you hold your sticks, and which parts of your muscles, your wrists, your forearms, even your shoulders you use to strike with. Next thing will be our placement on the instrument. For instance, on a snare drum, the edge is going to give you more of a piano sound, and it'll naturally grow in dynamic as you move towards the center. On a marimba bar, if you were to play towards the nodes, you would get a quieter dynamic. However, this has, once again, an effect on the tone of the instrument. As you move away from those primary playing zones, you're going to get less and less resonant sounds. And finally, as a last resort, once you've tried all of these things and you've adjusted your technique which way and that way to try to achieve the dynamic that you want, we can always change sticks, mallets, or change instruments completely. You want to begin by using your technique to change dynamics in order to develop this high level of sound control that every musician needs. However, sometimes it's just not achievable. If you can't quite cut through the ensemble with your softest timpani mallets, go a step harder. Because our percussion implements are so simple, it's actually quite easy to make your own if the situation demands it. In the past, I've taken snare drum sticks and wrapped the tips in moleskin. I've used different lengths of dowel to create my own implements with a thinner sound. I've used foam to create super soft atmospheric mallets. And if you've tried all of this and still can't get the dynamic that you need, try changing instruments. As percussionists, it's easy as swapping out a snare drum. Finally, some tips to improve the quality of your dynamics and your dynamic changes. Use repeats as an opportunity to show off your dynamic contrast. If you play a line more than once, don't give the audience what they've already heard. Make it interesting. Change up the dynamic. When preparing a piece of music, understand where your high points and low points are going to be. That way, you have a goal dynamically, and you have something to reach for as you move about the piece. This will kind of help with that forward motion, and it'll also help keep you from overshooting your dynamics or giving it away too early. Hold off on your crescendos. My college professor taught me this trick to kind of increase the drama of a longer crescendo. What you do is, if you have a long crescendo, You save the majority of it for the final stretch in order to increase the tension of the part. Practice and perform your dynamics very deliberately. If you're playing a decrescendo, every note should be quieter than the last. A crescendo, every note should be growing in strength. Bring your lows down lower and your highs higher, and play up that contrast every chance that you get. When playing a loud extended note, be sure not to lose volume after the attack. You want a sustained loudness, not a loud attack and a quiet note, unless that's what the music calls for. Lastly, practice your dynamics in every which way imaginable. Practice your loud parts soft. Practice your soft parts loud. Put decrescendos on the entire piece. Put crescendos every 3 bars, even though it's got 4-bar phrasing. Once you are comfortable with that sound control, playing through the dynamics of a piece is going to be a piece of cake. Regardless of any of this, volume control is an extremely important skill for all musicians to have. You may be practicing in the same place, your house, your bedroom, your practice room, but you're going to be performing in a variety of different locations, and you need to modulate your playing to accommodate those places. You wouldn't play in a coffee house gig the same way that you would play on stage at a concert hall. I'm Dryden Hill, thank you very much for watching, and remember, play the music that you love.